Hi, folks. My name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. So, today we're going to talk to you about consequences and overthinking or less thinking. We'll figure that out when we get into the episode. But nowadays, if you think about it, we overthink many different things in a positive way and the negative way. Which one is good? Which one is bad? You judge when we get on the call with my guest today. And she's an amazing person so far that I've spoken to her just right before this call. And she's great. So thank you again. Mitra, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, anytime. Thank you again for coming on Back to Basics. Before we get started with the whole call today, uh, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
Hmm. I think when I just hear the word, it means really going to fundamental of things and the really understanding of things from the foundational level. That's what it means to me.
Yeah. Thank you again for a simple answer and a simple question too at the same time. So thank you again for that. So before we get started with the whole topic, can we explain to people that who are you and what are you and what do you do in the West Coast? You're on the West Coast and it's all warm and cozy over there. So explain to us, what do you do over there?
I'm a mindfulness educator, which has a meaning now, but it didn't 37 years ago when I first started. Basically, it means that I teach people to, or coach people to live and work mindfully and with a sense of peacefulness.
Mm.
Um, I say that my arenas are from classrooms to boardrooms to bedrooms to courtrooms because I cover all these areas. I teach mindfulness at UCLA. UCLA is Semel Institute Mindful Awareness Research Center. And I also have a private practice where I see work with clients and also train corporations and workplaces to create a more peaceful environment and more productive kind of work.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, by the way, and thank you for answering all that. Try to explain to people who you are and try to make them understand that why did I invite you, and you have so much of knowledge, which I just want to dissect all the information from you. So thank you again for that.
Sure.
So today we're going to talk about the negative versus the positive thoughts, which is the overthinking thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so obviously there is definitely a big difference between the positive and the negative. So let's focus on the negative one, if we don't mind, because I think we overthink many different things. We lose a job, we lose a friend, a family member, any of those aspects. But even the simple things that we also overthink. For example, we run out of gas, we overthink. So what are your thought process on that? How do we channelize the negativity?
Sure. Um, the way I look at overthinking, I think overthinking in its nature, in its essence, is a problem. It is not so much that we divide the thoughts into negative and positive, because that on it itself is not a problem. The problem is that we believe that we are the basically the servant or at service of our thinking mind. Our
Mm,
thinking mind, I always, because I teach at workplaces and corporations, imagine that there is a company called Me Inc. In my case, it will be
mm,
Mitra Inc. The
mhm,
question is, who is the CEO of this company?
mhm,
Well, it is supposed to be the aware me, the awakened me, the one who knows. But on autopilot, and when we are not aware, the decision maker basically is our thinking mind, our rational mind, which there is nothing wrong with it. But remember, that is only one of the staff, one of the employees of this company. This thinking mind, this rational mind, does not own the company, Me Inc., but
mm,
it acts as if it does.
mm. So you'd have think yourself as an as an employer or as an employee.
Good question. Depends. If I'm at the service of my rational mind, my thinking mind, then I will be an employee.
Hmm.
But if I am actually in charge, so imagine if this was a person and it was a very, very good rational person and you had hired this person. It
Hmm.
is great to ask for their service, ask for their intelligence, ask for their information. But it's not great if I leave all the decision making to this one person. By the way, we have so many employees in this Me Inc. I've got billions and billions of potentiality to consult with, and yet I am at the service of only one of them.
Right. So let me ask you four quick questions, and you give me an answer if it is an employee or as an employer. How about that?
Sure.
Uh, I lost a job.
What do you mean? Am I employee or employer? What is the
Right.
actual question?
So my question is, I lost a job or I got laid off.
Okay.
So is that employee or is an employer thought process?
If you're in charge and you see that into your benefit and you see great an opportunity for change and transformation, it has come my way, then you are an employer. But if you are feeling like a victim, oh my God, why out of all people they got rid of me, they never liked me, I think I'm this, I think there's something wrong with me, then you are an employee, meaning you are not in charge, you are not feeling that you are really the driver of the vehicle called your life, or in this case, your work.
Okay. How about losing weight?
Losing weight, who's in charge? Who's in charge? Most people say, I cannot do this. And I always tell people, scientifically speaking, that statement is inaccurate. You can always do something differently. And when you understand that, then you make decisions from a position of power as opposed to a place from a place that says, I just can't do it. And why do we say that? We normally say, because my genes are this way or my environment is that way, right? So science now, the neuroscience shows that there is a neuroplasticity in our mind, so we can actually work with our minds, and there is epigenetics in our genes, which means I can work even if I had the genes, so-called bad genes, I could turn the volume up or I can turn the volume down.
Yeah, thank you again. And two more questions, quick ones. Nowadays, we're going through a crisis, which is the virus going on, the COVID going on right now. So, if I had COVID, am I an employee or an employer?
If you have COVID and you see yourself as a victim, you see it's not the situation that determines
Hmm.
how you are. It is your belief that determines how you are. I got COVID actually last year around the same time now, and I was feeling completely charged and I was in a bad shape. But I was feeling, that's interesting. I have an opportunity to rest and attend to my body. My body is speaking to me and I need to listen to it. Thank you, body, for giving me that opportunity. So, was I a victim of it? No, I was actually a beneficiary of it. But
Hmm.
if I was thinking, oh my God, my cousin didn't get sick, my friend didn't get sick, my like didn't get, a neighbor didn't get sick, but I got sick, so that I would be the victim. So what I'm trying to say is, you can ask many questions, but it's not about the situation. It
Hmm.
is about how you show up. And once we understand that, then that's a very empowering state of being.
Hmm. And the fourth, last question: I'm still single and I'm not married.
Mm, great. Then you haven't been able to really find who you are, to find a match for yourself. And that's a very exciting state to be in. I can get to know myself and I can then go from that point of knowing, find a partner that suits me and suits my life.
See how
I'll,
easy was that? They're all simple questions, aren't they? And they're all basic answers too, the way you're saying it. We overcomplicate things when we come to these answers, right? And and it's not needed sometimes. So thank you again for explaining the ink equals to the employee or in the employer aspect of it. So thank you again for that.
sure.
Now, so let me ask you this. Now, reacting in loop and then having a chemical reaction when it comes to negativity. Is that a bad thing? thinking over and over again in a loop.
It's not a helpful thing. I don't know about bad and good, but I know about helpful and not helpful. It is not helpful because you get to a place that you cannot stop. Anytime that you lose the command of yourself and your thoughts and your behavior, that means that it's not helpful.
Mm.
So what happens is a thought arrives, and then out of that thought another thought arrives, and before I know it there's another thought. I always tell my students, if you ever think out loud, meaning giving words to your thoughts, you will never call anybody crazy again, because the craziest voice in the world is the one that lives upstairs in our heads. So, anytime that there is no space between our thoughts, that is not helpful, because that means that we are not in charge and in command of what's going on in our heads. And that is a very important place to be in charge of.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again for that. Let me ask you this here. We have it's really sad, but it's true that we have tons and tons of negativity people around us and
Mhm.
negative people around us. It's a shame. And how when we come to that point when we meet those type of people, it could be friends or it could be family member, okay? It's a very testy topic, but how do we tell them saying that let's not talk to me because that's too much of negative in
Mm.
front of me? How do we tell them to stop? How do we walk away from that? Because it's not a healthy situation, right? But we want to help them at the same time. So how do we do that?
Sure. We can never tell people what to do. And if you haven't figured that out, then you haven't been around people. We cannot tell people what to do. What we can do is to show them, not tell them, show them that we're not interested in a dance. I started this session and called what you're doing dancing with many guests. We are always dancing, always dancing. The question is, what music we're dancing to.
Mm,
So if I enter the room and I'm very negative and I bring my negativity with me, what I'm doing is I'm inviting you to dance with me with a music of negativity. You can tell me off, you can tell me how bad I am, you can tell me how bad that negative voice is. I will just become more reactive and probably more strong in where I'm standing. But if you do not engage in that dance, or if you are strong enough, present enough, and these are the fundamentals and basics, talking about basics, basics of mindfulness. If you're present enough and aware enough to change that music to a stronger music, you called it negative and positive, a positive kind of music, then that means you're showing me, not telling me. So I keep saying, do you know this is the news? Do you know what's happening to people? And you either don't engage, or you say that I prefer to talk about something else. Do you also know there's so many good things happening in the world? Do you also know there's this news that I've received? And if I'm not interested, and I may not be, then you can choose. You have a choice to continue dancing or stop dancing and allowing the music to die off, because it eventually will die off.
is that the same answer even for a family member?
It's the same answer for family member, except you need to be far more consistent, because with a friend or a neighbor or a colleague, I can leave. But
Right.
usually with family members, what do I do if my brother is like that? What do I do if my in-laws are like that, right?
Mm,
The question is, can you leave, meaning physically leave, or can you leave, energetically leave the conversation?
mm,
Sometimes, and you know what I mean, because you know how sometimes we're listening to somebody but we're not there, we're
right.
actually in, like, I'm thinking about dinner but I'm
Right.
pretending I'm listening to you.
Yes.
Well, we can do that with awareness, and I believe it or not, I do it quite often when I see that the energy that I'm receiving is not conducive to my health or
Mm,
my well-being. I
mm,
actually go somewhere else intentionally. So I started, and the person is saying, yeah, it's so bad, people are dying, and da, da, da. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do this for that training and I'm going to contact that. So I'm not engaged energetically, because not every time I can just get up and leave the room. Sometimes it's inappropriate, and sometimes I really literally cannot. So The question is, where is my attention? Huh? If my attention is not focused on the negativity that that person is emanating, that I am completely in charge of what I'm feeling and how I'm conducting this dance.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for explaining that, because some people, they get stuck into that loop and they don't know how to get out of it, even though that they know that the right thing to do is to get away from that. And you explained it just correctly. So I'm going to go and listen to that and explain to people whenever that situation comes up. So thank you again for explaining that to me.
Sure.
So now the other thing is, how many people have come to you and asked you the top three questions? What are the top three questions that people, they come to you?
It's exactly what first the one is the exact one that you just asked. It's so interesting. How can I change fill in the blank? My lover, my colleague, my daughter, my somewhere. People really are under illusion that they can change anybody.
Mm,
And here's the second problem, that we think it is information that people are missing. And if we just give them information, they will change. So they usually say, I told them so many times. And I always say, so did, and I usually name some prophets, so did this person, but nobody listened to them either. So when you understand the essence of change and when the change takes place when our consciousness it is at a higher level. So
mm,
you can give me all the information you want about health, about mental health, about spirituality, about anything. And
mm.
if my consciousness is not at that level, I would never listen to you. So the first and most common things that I have heard, and I've worked on 4 continents and lived on 4 continents, is how do I change someone? And the answer is you can't. Please give up on that and focus on your own health and wealth and well being, because that energy is a complete total waste.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for explaining that, that whatever I asked you, that is one of the top three. And you and I never really exchanged notes. So thank you again for explaining that I'm on the same page as you. So let me ask you this here. Thinking, thought inside you, right? The
Mhm,
inner self. Okay.
mhm,
Is
mhm.
that how the name came up for inner mapping for your foundation, inner map?
Hmm. Yes, that I realized that there is an inner map and then there is the outer map. So the outer map is when I'm at the mercy of what's happening outside of me, and
Mm,
the inner map is the one that I'm in charge and I decide where I want to go. So the idea was when we chose the name inner map that I will go with my inner map as opposed to be the victim of outer maps that are drawn by many other individuals who may not have my well-being in heart or agree with what I believe in. Yes, that's where it came from.
yeah, thank you. Thank you again for explaining that. So let me ask you this here. Our thoughts indicate our characters makes us the way we are and the way we overthink. Is that true statement? Or is that other people making us?
Hmm. Our thoughts form our beliefs. So a belief is a practiced thought.
Hmm,
So we count on our beliefs and we say, I think so, as if like that's a very reliable point of reference. But you asked the second question. You said, do our thoughts come from us or from others? So I give you a little bit of a research. About something like 80 something percent, and I don't remember the exact number, I think it's 87. 87% of the thoughts that we have usually are recycled thoughts and they do not belong to us. We think we are very innovative with our thoughts, but really, I have taken the thoughts that already exist and made it, tailor made it to my situation, and I'm just repeating those thoughts. So we are not that innovative when it comes to worrying and, as you called it, negative thoughts. We are recycling the worrying thoughts, except like you may be worrying about getting a virus. I pick up on that thought and I may apply it to something else in my life, but I picked up that worrying thought from somebody else. And we normally are basically copying and reproducing the thoughts that are already there in the world, and we just adapt it to our own situation. The problem with that, the reason for that, is because most of us, most of the time, live in a survival mode, meaning I believe that my life is in danger even when it's not, and I live with that sense of scarcity. So most of my thoughts are about, oh my God, oh my God, there's not enough of this. What if I don't fit in? What if they don't like me? What if I can't do it? What if they did? It's always about what if and something negative. And that is why that produces, that state of being produces many, many worrying negative thoughts.
Yeah, thank you again. I've not even touched the aspect of a person losing someone in the family either, and that's a very big grief, and going into that loop and overthinking. So we'll get into that next time if you like, or if you want to answer very quickly, you can answer too. How do you deal with people when they lose someone in the family, then they overthink themselves?
Yes. So it really goes back, everything goes back to our belief. The question is, I taught a whole class on death, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Not a very popular subject, but a lot of people showed up.
Sure.
So the question is, what is your belief around death? If you believe, and many people do, that death is a punishment, and how do I know? People say that, like, she was such a nice person but she died, as if like nice people are not supposed to die, only
Sure.
horrible people need to
Right.
die.
Right.
So if it really goes back to that, what is my um, belief around death? Number one. Number two, I call it death preparedness. We do not have a culture or a system that allows us to speak about death, and hence death is this like horrible thing. And if you look at it, I always say death has a very bad PR company that represents it. It's always like, ooh, frightening. It's never been discussed as a beautiful state and stage of life that is after our physical life. So hence we all see it as a punishment, we see it as a negative thing. Am I saying that if I lose a loved one I'm going to be singing and dancing? No, of course I'm going to be really unhappy and will be missing them. But if my belief is that they are continuing their life in a different form and different way, there will be a completely different mourning and grieving kind of a process than when I see it as it was bad and something bad happened and we must have done something bad if somebody died, and then go into guilt and regret, which many people do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And one last thing, I know that early in the beginning of the episode, we talked about the negative and versus the positive, and we have touched so much on the negativity, didn't realize that we still have to work on the positive. So, is there any quick remedy for positive, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, there is. And by positive, I mean really bringing balance, because our mind has a very imbalanced approach to negative thoughts. It's attracted to it. It's more, um, I call it sexy. If you look at the news, if you look at the movies, if you look at even advertisements, you see that the negativity brings far more attraction. So we are somehow by design attracted to negative thoughts. And the way we can balance it, and I'm not saying that don't see what's wrong, but don't focus on what's wrong. They're two
Sure.
different kind of idea, is to really bring a balance and ask a question. So I normally suggest when I'm doing executive coaching with my clients, I ask them when they wake up in the morning, the first thing they do is to ask themselves, what is right with my life?
Mm.
And the reason for that is because on autopilot, the mind immediately goes to, oh, Monday. Oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. Oh my God, I don't know if I can. It goes automatically there. So balancing it out allows us to be in a place that we can actually make decisions from an informed place. So ask yourself, make it a habit first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up, before you get to that like full awakeness state, in that, like, sort of a very, actually, it's a very sweet place. You're not sleeping, you're not awake. You ask yourself, and it's a practice, it's a habit. I do it naturally now after so many years. What's right with today? Well, first of all, I woke up. Most people don't. And look for something small. Don't look for award-winning things that are good in your life.
Mm,
Start with the fact that you have a pillow. I always think, oh, I have a great pillow. I love my pillow. Then I think about anything else that might be positive,
mm.
because it's not the thing that is important. It is the disposition, it's the energetic
That's right.
space you go to when you ask that question. So if you smile to somebody as you're, just walking on the street, they don't know why you're smiling. You may have a silly reason to smile, but immediately you see it's quite contagious. They just naturally go like to a better place when they look at your face. So it's the same thing doing it with yourself. Ask yourself, what is working in my life right now? And when you ask that, mind actually is quite a good servant. It will go and serve you. It will go and find that answer and bring it to you.
Thank you again for explaining that in a very basic way when it comes to negative and positive. And the reason why I focus so much on negative is because there's just too many people asking too many questions, and we need to explain to them in a basic way that who to come to, how to ask the question, and I hope I asked the right questions. But thank you again for explaining that in a basic way when it comes to, mindfulness, when it comes to overthinking. So, what are your thoughts on that so far on this call?
Yes, I think you have great question. And I love that you called it basic, because they call it the beginner's mind in the world of mindfulness. It's the best place to start. It's like, you always enjoy going to the basics, and that's where we actually go wrong. So I love the fact, and that was one of the attractions of accepting your invitation, that you talk about the basics, because every usually our problems reside in the basics, that we didn't really check the basics, and then we built a whole construction on basis of a not very good foundation.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again for coming on my show and making this brighter for me. And I have one last question, and it's a funny question too. Are you ready to be happy?
Thank you. Yes, that's the title of a course that I taught. Believe it or not, most people aren't. I am always ready to be happy, because I think happiness is a choice, and I want to make that choice. And people have happiness trauma, believe it or not, the
Yep.
association. That's why I asked that question. And thank you for checking it out and talking about
Thank
it.
you. Thank you again. And do you have any last quick words for Back to Basics? And how was your journey in this the whole show today?
It was great, short and sweet. I love that, and appreciate the invitation. And if people are interested to find out more about mindfulness or any work that we do, they can just go to my name, mitramanesh.com. There are a lot of mindfulness courses, from basic to more advanced, and from home to work, in many places in between. I'm really glad that I accepted the invitation, and I hope that you keep talking about basics. I loved the conversation we had before the interview too, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mitra, for coming here and making this brighter for me. And stay blessed and stay focused and keep on supporting me on my small journey that I have on my podcast here.
Of course, no problem. Take good care. Bye bye.
Thank you. So, guys, we spoke with Mitra today and we talked about the basics of, well, basics of negativity, basics of positivity. But there's only one thing that I've asked her, one simple question. Are you happy? Not a lot of people know how to answer that question. And it's okay that if you don't answer that question. Because you know what? Just like what she said, think of the small baby steps. If you woke up this morning, you should be happy that you woke up because there's a lot of people who have not woken up this morning. So think of those things. You can walk, you can get your coffee, you have a house. There's a lot of people who don't have any of that stuff. Be appreciative of what you have in a basic way. And that's what we're trying to say. I hope Mitra likes the quote of the day from Back to Basics. So here's the quote of the day. The quote of the day is, the little things, the little moments, they aren't little. They are actually huge, aren't they? And that's the quote of the day. And I hope that summarized the whole episode that I've done today. So, guys, as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Keep on commenting as much as you can, good, bad, ugly, either way. It'll make my show stronger day by day, week by week, because your comment makes me stronger. And no comments, I don't even know what you want. So that's why I ask you, comment as much as you can. And usual, as always, there are three things that makes this show popular. One is the content, the other is the fabulous guest, and the third of all, the best host ever. Guys, take care, God bless, and I'll see you next week. Next week's episode on Back to
Stressor
Basics.
in their lives.
Hmm.
And under these circumstances, how could it not be? I have grown children with children of all ages, so I know firsthand that as gorgeous and adorable as they are, it's really challenging right now. And again, in terms of all the decisions that have to be made every single day anew in terms of their welfare, like you don't even know whether they're going to school or not. And then for my college age grandchildren who didn't even know whether they were going to go back or not. I mean, it's just, you go to bed at night not knowing what tomorrow may bring or how to even necessarily plan for it. And I think that's new. I think that's different. Again, I think that the routines are not as readily available. Those energy saving routines are just not as available as they were. So
yeah, thank you again for explaining that. But let me ask you this here, because you brought up a great point about parenting, and people are realizing about parenting now more than ever.
yeah,
But before, we used to send the kids for 7, 8 hours in school, and then they come back for only